Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Carol Tice. Carol books. She's an ebook ghostwriter, a business writer, and also the founder of Make a Living Writing and the Freelance Writer's Den. I get this question all the time. How do I hire a ghostwriter? Should I hire a ghostwriter? How much do ghostwriters cost? How do you find a good one? All these things. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Carol, welcome. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me. And besides those other things, I am a book ghostwriter. That is my main focus these days. So
for sure. Awesome. Well, hey, first off, why hire a ghostwriter? Like, and I guess maybe even two-pronged question. Why hire a ghostwriter, and how does someone know if they should hire a ghostwriter or if they should write the book themselves?
it is a good question. I guess I think a lot of people feel like they're going to write their book, and then a year or 5 years or 10 years later, that book is still not written because writing is actually hard. And especially for people who don't play with words for a living all day around the clock for 25 years. If you are coming out of some other field, you have this stuff in you want to get out, you have a story you want to tell, and you're finding it's hard. And the thing is, you want that legacy out there. You want to be making a difference with what you have to tell people. And it's like the road to you writing it yourself could extend into the far distance, but you're like, 8 months from now, I'm going to be at a conference speaking, and I want that book in my hand to hand people then. But I work, and or run a business or whatever you do, and I just am not seeing that it will happen in that time frame unless I hire a professional and kind of mostly delegate this project. Is a big one. The other one is there's a lot of people who have had incredible life experiences and stuff, but they're kind of not writers. They're not people who got an A in English in school and, got A's on their college papers and stuff. Like, they're just not kind of writerly types, and or someone who's just finding it hard to put their butt in a chair for the many 11 hours that it takes to craft a book. And you feel like the quality of what you're writing, you're just seeing it, and you're thinking about the books you like to read, and you're thinking, the quality it's not what I want it to be. It's not coming through in a powerful way. And I need a professional's help to make sure that I'm communicating my ideas and making the impact I want to make.
Yeah.
So I'd say, quality and time are two big reasons.
For sure. Now, what's your advice for folks who are kind of on the fence or in between? Like, how do I know, okay, maybe I should just double down and actually write this thing myself versus, all right, this is the tipping point of where I definitely need to bring someone outside to write this?
Boy, that's a tough call. I think it comes down to being really realistic with yourself about what's more important to you, that that you wrote every word of this yourself, or that it, is brilliant writing and it's going to blow minds and change lives and enlighten and uplift people. And it's really going to have the full impact that you want. And also, of course, another tipper is whether you have the budget to hire a book ghost, which I know is one of the big questions. And when I meet with new clients, I often find they have absolutely no idea what professional ghostwriters work for, and they're quite shocked when they find out.
Yeah, so let's start there, because that'll probably rule out a decent amount of people. So let's start with the range. Like, all right, from what to what? Like, what's the absolute cheapest and probably not going to be as good? What's like kind of standard? And then what's like, okay, this is a definite professional. What's that range look like? How much does this cost?
Sure. The range for professional ghostwriters who do this all the time for a living starts around and we're talking full length book, a full length business book, 225, 50 pages is more if you're talking about you want to write some 400, 500 word giant memoir or something. But most books that are getting ghosted are kind of in the 200, 300 word kind of range. And the bottom of that is $30,000 and it goes up to about 75 and more. I just saw a contract for 75 in one of the ghostwriting groups that I'm in. And the difference is, before you have a heart attack and die, I just want to say that there are a lot of shorter books than that out there. There's a lot of people creating kind of 100-page ebooks, and that is obviously not as much money. I just did one for 20,000. That was a shorter book. So it's not like there is no ability to do anything below these prices. Why the low and why the high depends on the credentials of the writer you're hiring. At the top end of that scale tends to be not the self-publishing school type of people, but the people who are seeking an agent and need someone with a track record of writing and selling book proposals to publishers. That's sort of that's a highly valued skill in the marketplace, obviously, that commands a lot. If you're more like me, I've written a couple of traditional book titles, but I was approached to write both of them. So I didn't have to sell the proposal. I don't have that credit, but I have both traditional publishing and then a dozen plus ebooks that I've used in my own business. I'm more kind of at the lower end of that right now because I'm kind of getting back into this as my full-time focus and out of other kinds of content. So hopefully that gives you some idea. But yes, there is an entire underworld beneath this of people who are willing to write your book for $500. They are often not based in the United States or Canada or the UK. And what you are going to get is probably going to disappoint you. But yeah, you could find someone out there who'll be like, yeah, I'll write your book for $2,000. They've probably never ghosted a book before, have no idea how long that's going to take. And you are highly unlikely to be satisfied with the result. But, somewhere along that scale, maybe you know a journalist friend who's been dying to get into book ghosting and they have a lot of reporting and interviewing experience and you like the storytelling in their clips, and maybe you want to find someone you want to take a flyer on, and be their first kind of maybe they've done a lot of long blog posts or special reports, or they've done long form but not quite book long form. I'd say is the sweet spot of where you maybe find someone who might be willing to do a first one for $5,000 or $10,000 because they want the credit and they want to get into the space.
That makes sense. And I want to talk a little bit about the differences between levels and how to find a good one and all that stuff. Before we get there, coming back to cost a little bit, how do most ghostwriters charge? Are we talking per word? Is it per project? I know you said it depends on how long the book is. Can you give us, is it normally a flat fee? Is it per word, something else?
I hope to heck nobody out there is charging per word, because then we're all going to have to sit around counting words, and that's pretty weird. And not exciting, very time consuming. And, what, it's going to be a few dollars less if it's a little short. If I make it more concise and impactful, I'll get penalized. No. In general, we want to know roughly how long is this book. We think in terms of word counts. Is this it's an 80,000 word manuscript. It's a 40,000 word manuscript. What are we talking about here? We like to think in words rather than pages, because your pages could be anything. You could be doing one of those ebooks that have one paragraph on each page and a graphic, so we want to know how many words am I creating. And then once we know that, usually there's two main ways I know that people charge: milestones or monthly payments. I'm like 50 or 30% upfront, some big chunk upfront. I want a lot upfront because it helps make you committed that we're going to finish this. And I have an obsession with results. I'm a results oriented person. I know writers who are happy to charge you an hourly rate and just roll along with you for 5 years while you keep changing your mind about what this book's going to be and stuff, and they just make money off it. That's not my situation. I want to know, I want a project where you really want this done in the next 6 months. You need it in your hand. We're going to make a book and it's going to come out, because I want the credit, I want the sense of completion out of it. So that's how I operate. But some people will just charge a monthly fee, and if you take longer, like that monthly rate will just keep going. And some do take credit cards, something to know, because it's such a big project.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like the milestones, and so there's what you're paying, and then how, how you're paying it. So can you speak to, from the author's perspective, if you're on the author's side of the table, like, what do you recommend for them? Should they go flat fee and with a payment schedule based on milestones? Should they go by the hour? Like, how do you know when to decide on what?
I think there's a lot of peace of mind to picking a number and saying, this is the price you will pay. And there's a lot of writers who do, 2 rounds of revisions and then I'm going to charge more. I write till you're ecstatic. And I've never really had to write multiple drafts. It's never been a problem. But I've been writing, since dinosaurs roamed. So I feel confident that I can deliver, and that I can listen to what you're wanting out of me, and I can get it on the page for you. So it's usually like a chunk up front, a chunk when you turn in the first draft, a chunk when you turn in maybe a second or final draft, and the finalization, final
Got it.
edits,
And
kind
so
of
you
4
think that's the best
milestones.
way
I
to do
just
it?
I just
Yeah.
did one that was monthly payments, and it seemed like
Yeah.
it worked out fine. It worked out great for me because they didn't get me stuff, so I've gotten fully paid, and their book isn't done. But that's on them.
Yeah.
When I block out the time, I'm like, I'm committed to getting it done in this time frame. I'll do whatever it takes if this is what we need. But you have to be responsive. If you are
Mm-hmm.
ghosting me for 2 weeks on stuff I need to write this next chapter, it's going to take longer.
Got it.
So
And so
got to be kind of responsive.
you would recommend that over, so if I'm hearing you, it sounds like you wouldn't recommend, on the author side of things, doing a per hour because it can just run up a fee? Or are there certain instances where you'd say, hey, maybe that makes sense?
If you are someone who's just really wrestling with your material, and you feel like the draft may change a lot over time, it may be impossible to do a project rate, because we just sort of don't know the shape of the elephant, really, and then it turns into an hourly rate thing. It just sort of has to be that. What I would recommend, what I want to know when I talk to in a first meeting, is I'm like, when do you need this by? Why do you need it? What is the goal of this book? Why this book? Where does this book fit with any other maybe marketing you may be doing? If you're not a memoirist, if you're writing a business book, how does this fit into your big picture? Why? What are you hoping this will do for your career or your brand or your company? I want to know about that, and then I want to know if there's an outline. Does this book have an outline? Or is it an idea in your head? Like, what is the stage it is at? Is it just like a glimmer in your eye, or is it you have fully outlined it, or you kind of have a rough idea? Um, a lot of times I see outlines where they kind of get halfway through and then it sort of peters out. And I'm sure you train people up on this in self-publishing school, but I'm obsessed with outlining the book first. If you do that first, then you don't get caught in that hourly rate trap, and you don't know what you're making, and it's just going to go on and likely be more expensive in
Mm,
the end.
mm,
I want to outline it because first of all, it makes me confident that we have structured the book properly, and I'm sure you talk a lot about book structure, and I want to know that we're creating something. We're starting down a road, we're down the yellow brick road to your
mm-hmm.
book, and we know where this road goes. We know all the towns it's going to go through and where it gets at the end. And both because I don't like things that train wreck and turn into a mess
Yeah.
and don't turn into a book, and because once we really have outlined it thoroughly and we really know what's up, then we can write the chapters in any order.
Mm.
And that means if you're, if you're writing the memoir of your World War II days, and oh my God, you have this thing that just came to your head about this thing you and your best buddy did, like, we can just sit and write that chapter because we know where it goes. I know how to transition into it and out of it. I know what's coming before and after it, and what the reader will know to that point and what they won't know yet. So that is incredibly freeing. And it creates a lot of flexibility working with your ghost. And it's like, if you need to get me some stuff, I don't have to wait for that, because I can go write another chapter where I already have stuff. And so it tends to help things move along and not get bogged down.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here. I hope you're loving this episode so far. It's time to go from inspiration to implementation. All right, so if you've learned something, we want to help you implement what you've learned with your book. So what I want you to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a publishing consultation with one of the experts on my team. We'll talk about your goals for your book, your dreams, your challenges, your next steps, and we'll start putting together a plan. All right, so go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a call with the team. Let's see how we can help with your book. It's time to implement. And you've kind of alluded to this, and so I'll just kind of dive in a little bit more, but what's the process look like of working with a ghostwriter? Like, how long does it take on average? And then it sounds like, what you were just saying is, hey, I want to start with an outline. And so that's to even scope the project and all that stuff. But can you kind of zoom out, how long does it take on average, and what's the overarching kind of process?
Sure. That's pretty much the top question I get is, how will this work? What is the process going to look like? And my answer is, like, however you need it to look like. We're a service business as your ghostwriter, and my job is to make this happen for you in whatever way is possible for you. And often people who want books ghosted are very, very busy people. And I had one guy who could only talk to me with his phone in his pocket while he walked his morning walk. That was like the only time block that he had. You know, I think my job is to make this process happen and to take as little of your time as possible. I want to start by sucking all the raw material I can out of you. Have you been doing YouTube trainings about this? You gave a speech that was recorded. You've written articles about this. All of the stuff we already have. I'm going to go synthesize that, and then I'm going to ask you things, and I'm going to try and be efficient with that so that it's not like every day of the week I'm calling you with 3 more questions. The book I just did, the short book I just did, I've only done about 3 sessions with the author, who is a attorney who is super busy. And, I go along, I research things online, I'm putting pieces together from past writing he's done. And then I'm like, okay, well, here's where we need something new. I need to know what you feel about this, this. And we'll wait till we have a pile of those and run through them. Then I go off, write another chunk. But some people like to record their voice and you go transcribe it, or I interview you and pull it out of you. I'm here to sort of do it in whatever way gets done. I sent those attorneys an email with a bunch of questions. I thought they could email back the answers, but like apparently that doesn't work for them. So now we're setting another appointment for me to talk it out of them.
Yeah.
So we're kind of here to make this a reality.
Got it. And so just synthesizing a little bit, it sounds like, and so it starts with the outline. And I mean, that's the starting point. And you're right. We talk a lot about this at self-publishing schools, like the mind map outline write process or the mind map outline speak process. And so whether you're writing it or speaking it, it's a brain dump crystallized into an outline. That's the starting point. Then you said, all right, what I want to do is, do you have any recorded content on this? As the ghostwriter will then, can then listen to that, watch that sort of thing, synthesize it. Then it seems like there's a series of interviews, either informal or formal kind of structured process, I guess, probably depending on the ghostwriter. Anything else? Well, I guess I know actually, let me pause right there and back up. Those 3 kind of sessions, like, what type of questions are you asking? Again, I'm just trying to keep going back through the lens of the author too, is like, how do I know what to expect? Is the ghostwriter coming with questions on each of those? And that's kind of a formulaic process. What does that look like?
The short answer is yes. I have questions. Because what I want is enough detail to be able to spin a story where the reader feels like they're really there. And, I'm going to ask you what that tasted like, smelled like. Was it morning, night? Who was there? How did this, how did the sound of your feet sound on the pavement you were walking down? What did you think when then this revelation happened? What was the first thing that went through your mind? What'd you do next? Um, you know, uh, so that I'm telling a story and it's not just facts, facts, facts. I would say that that's the big thing that a lot of non-professional writers end up with is they want to tell their story and they start telling it, and what they realize is that it's just kind of boring. It's just kind of facts, facts, facts. And that's because it doesn't have the five senses in it and the reactions. And that's the other thing, is that there are often other people I'm going to interview who were there, who knew you, who know you, who mentored you, who were mentored by you, whoever needs to be in here. I'm going to be off talking to those other people also, and getting those materials together.
Nice. So you do those interviews, and then is it all right? Take that, and then there's kind of the written manuscript. It gets passed back to the author, and then there's feedback in a second round, or what's kind of the next steps from there?
So I like to do the outline. I like to do the outline project as a separate project. I think it's a great way to get kind of a little bit pregnant with the idea of hiring a ghost and fill each other out for $1,000 or $2,000, and see what you like see if you like working together. Because it's kind of like a marriage. It's a little bit, it's very, the chemistry of it is important, I think to get a good outcome. You kind of have to hit it off, I think, at a personal level, and feel like I will enjoy hanging out with this person and talking to them constantly, over this period and producing this work for them. I'm interested in their story. They like the writing I've done and want something somewhere in the ballpark of what they've seen me doing. I actually had a guy hire me recently on a $35,000 contract, and the thing blew up because he had never read me. He had his secretary like delegate the process of finding the person. So big tip, like go read some of the other work of the person before you hire them.
That's a great
I think I went off topic, but I had to throw that in.
That's great. And that kind of leads into next train of thought, or people, thing that people are probably wondering is, how do I actually find a good one? Like, how do I find a ghostwriter? Or actually, hold up, before, I don't know that we answered the previous question. Average length of time that it takes to go through this process.
4 to 6 months is kind of general rule of thumb. It depends on how, many other projects I have going on, how fast you need this. But in general, I think book ghosts tend to be mentally blocking out a half a year, if they're taking on a full length book project. That's what we're hoping it will be. It will be. And, it does run over. And if you're working with a good ghost and you've hit your final payment date or whatever, don't worry, we're not going to run away and leave you. We want the book to be done and come out, and we're just going to keep going until it's done.
Yeah. Cool. And so kind of with that in mind, how do you find a good one? Where do you look? How do you know if they're any good?
I would start with your network. If you know anybody who's had a book ghosted, ask on your LinkedIn if you have a big network there, or around your professional groups. Do you know anyone who's had a book ghosted? What was their experience? How did they find that ghost? Would they recommend that ghost? Other than that, there are agencies and platforms that do congregate ghostwriters together. And the one I've been getting a lot of leads from, that I kind of like them. And I think they, if you need someone to kind of pre-screen for you and you don't want to have to comb the woods, kind of one writer at a time, you can look on Reedsy. It's Reedsy. And you have to have existing book credits to get in. And I believe you can ask about a maximum of 6 people in their platform to consider your project at a time. If people pass, I think you can invite more. So people seem to be using it. You'll pay a little more because they charge 10%. So writers are going to build that into their fee. But maybe it saves a lot of time to go to something like that. There are groups like Gotham Ghostwriters in New York City. They do a lot of book contracts and other long form projects. And Claudia Suzanne is the only ghostwriting coach who has a university accredited program at Cal State Long Beach. And I believe she has an agency as well, that are all mostly her students that have been through her 2-year course in ghostwriting. So
Cool.
those are a few
Any,
resources. And
any other
obviously,
thoughts? Yeah.
Freelance Writers Den has a 1,500 or so members, and many of them are ghosts. I've coached quite a few people who are ghosts. So
Awesome.
there's some ideas.
So now, so kind of back to how do you know if they're any good? Like you gave the tip earlier, which I love. Read their writing, and is it stylistically a match? And then you talked about, hey, maybe you try it by working with them on an outline. So it's like a mentor of mine always said, I don't work with people until I work with them. I was like, what? He's like, I do a trial and we do a little bit of work together, and then I decide if I want to work with them. So I'm sure those are a couple things, but I guess even before the moment of decision, is there anything that you'd look for to kind of distinguish between, okay, this person's legit, their own style, versus this person's maybe not, or I'm going to take a flyer on this person, that sort of thing?
It's really a tricky thing, because most ghostwriters are not really going to be willing to be hired to write one chapter of your book as a tryout kind of a thing. It's sort of not done in ghostwriting. And when you're reading their clips, you're getting a sense of how they might write under their own byline, or how they ghosted in someone else's voice. And what a good ghostwriter is going to do is a ventriloquism act where your words are coming out of their pen. And so it's kind of like nothing you read will really, really, really tell you. But that's where I go to, like, read for the general vibe of what they create, which I think you'll see is probably kind of consistent across their work. And um, I think of the personal rapport, I think matters, because once you start saying, well, I'm not happy with this and I want to change this, and they need to be really receptive to that. That we are completely egoless in ghostwriting. It's your words. We're trying to create words that are like you fell into a dream state and wrote a book and woke up in the morning and went, oh my God, it's all written. But it sounds just like I wrote it. Amazing. That we're trying to create that effect. So it's tough. Some people start by having them ghost an article, ghost a smaller piece for them. I just had a contract like that
Good
where
idea.
he was like, I have an opportunity to be in a trade publication in my industry. So, and it's like a 3,000 word article. Well, that's kind of a book chapter length. So that can be a way to kind of try them out, have them ghost some blog content for you or something else under your byline, where you'd have that chance to see whether the ghost is really picking up on your kind of idioms of speech and your the way you say things and the way you think about things.
That's great. And you kind of alluded to this. Does this sound like me? Or that's the angle of like, hey, this sounds like me. How do you filter for that? And or even just in the working process, like how can you make sure that the ghostwriter is writing in your voice? Any tips?
It's not really something you do, it's something I do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pre-COVID, what you would typically want to do to ghost a book is go fly to wherever that person is and spend a day following around, listening to them talk to people in all kind of different contexts, to just particularly about the type of material that you'll be doing, so that you start to capture their idioms of speech. We all have sort of ways we express, and you want to the ghostwriter is mapping that. It's going, oh yeah, they don't say, you know airplane, they say fighter plane when they refer to the plane they flew in the war. They need to kind of get all those little ticks of language, is what goes a long way. And just hearing your cadences of speech, are you from the deep south, or from England, or people talk differently in different parts of the country, and they use different terms for things, and your job is to pick up on all of that, so it really does sound like them.
Cool. Now, question for you, because and this is around expectations management, I think on both sides of things. And so tips is the ghostwriting perspective, tips for the author. So over the years, I've had a bunch of friends that are like, Chandler, can you just send me a ghostwriter? And I'm like, I don't know if you actually want to ghostwrite the book. And then they'll go off, they'll hire a ghostwriter. They probably won't follow a lot of this advice. And then a year later, they're frustrated and they come to terms of like, crap, I went with someone, it wasn't a good experience. Now I'm having to write it myself. And like, that's why I've always been of the mind of like, hey, like it's worth the time to do it yourself. But I don't think it's an either or. I think there's like this overlap of doing it correctly, but you've got to be willing to pay money, and you've got to manage the process well. So, any tips on just kind of expectations management? I guess is it because from when they recount the story to me, it's like, well, yep, they went off and they wrote this thing and then it came back and I was like, this isn't me. It's not good. It's not my voice. It's a total rewrite. And then, all right, I'll just do it myself. So like, how can, from a ghostwriting perspective and an author's perspective, can you kind of structure the process and build in checkpoints to where there's not that
Yes.
oh crap moment?
Yes, please. Yeah. What you don't want is to send a ghostwriter off into the wilderness of Azazel to write your whole manuscript and then come back and go, okay, here it is. No. Yeah, you want to pick a first chapter to write, not necessarily the first chapter, maybe a chapter that's really important to the story, a typical chapter, and we write that one chapter and then it comes back to you. And if that isn't in your voice, we stop and work on that right away, right there, and make sure we've got that before we proceed. Absolutely. I don't want to write tens of thousands of words and then have someone tell me it needs to be done all over. But the other thing to say for people who are kind of like halfway there, they don't know, they have half a draft, you can hire a ghostwriter to rewrite, to give that a polish and write the back half that is missing. It isn't all or nothing. You can hire a developmental editor, different person, not me, to restructure your book or to line edit your book. You can hire a copy editor to just sort of smooth it. So there's different levels you can, work with it on, and that's also can be a way to keep the price down and get more of you into it. You feel like you really want to write it yourself, but you feel like it's not all the way there. It could be a rewrite. If you ask someone to do a complete rewrite, it will likely be the same amount of money. It is not less effort to completely rewrite a book. I just actually did that for someone. It was like a 12-year-old book. A lot of stuff was dated, and it is a completely new book.
I'm about to go through that with I'm doing an updated and revised version of my most recent book published, and there in a lot of ways I feel like I'm going back through and I'm like, all right, it's writing a new book. It feels like, oh, I'm editing an existing book, but it's writing a new book. So
don't kid yourself. If you're asking someone to rewrite a book, likely it is as much work and often more because you are working within the structure that's already there and everything.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you mentioned that last part, and this would be a good kind of couple final questions here. But you talked about the difference between a developmental editor and a ghostwriter. So if I'm someone who I had an outline, maybe I even spoke and got transcribed the chapters and that sort of thing, and that was the starting point. What's really the difference as you see it between a govostwriter finishing the book process and a developmental, or I would call it a content editor, like doing a lot of those things? How do I know if I'm on the line of like, okay, this needs a ghostwriter to finish it, or this could be a really good content editor to kind of take this kind of the final mile?
In general, editors don't write. They're not going to write. They're going to say, please restructure this to here, and this, I recommend compressing this section, and then they're going to send you off to go execute on their suggestions. And, they may do some edit work, but in general, editors get very hostile if they wake up in the morning and just start to get the feeling they're writing your book, because that's not what they do, and that's not what they want to do, and that's not what they get hired for or paid for, because editing is often a lot less. It's
Yeah.
supposedly going to be less work, but if they find they're getting sucked down the rabbit hole of writing the whole thing, then you can kind of have a mess on your hands.
Yeah. Cool. Now, kind of final couple questions from a ghostwriter's perspective. How can authors make your life easier? Like, what are the things that authors can do to kind of grease the wheels on the process, make it easier for the ghostwriter, which ultimately, leads to a faster process, less time by them, and a better book?
I took a bunch of notes on that, on, know what the proposed title and premise of your book is when you talk to a ghost, why you're doing this book, why now, what is your word count, what is your time frame, understand what budgets are for professional writers, so we don't have a shocked conversation when you find out what they are. And you don't waste ghosts' time. If you have a budget of $2,000, that you're not going to get a fully ghosted, professionally ghosted book. How will you market the book? Is something that, as a ghost, I would like to know. What is your plan for it? That will help me understand kind of a lot. Sometimes things about the tone and just about where this fits into the universe. Where is this book going? is helpful to know. And then I want to talk about the process. What will that process be like? What do you have for me already? How do you prefer I pull the other stuff out of you? How available are you? And be responsive. The secret is, you need to answer my calls. You need to be willing to set up a time to talk. We need to find the time. Just know that, if this kind of, you need to put some focus on it. Yes, you won't be sitting and writing it, and it will take a lot less time, and that'll be great. But if it's sort of your 10th priority and I'm asking for stuff, or the book host is asking for stuff, and you're like, well, maybe next week, time is going to just slide by. You're going to be way beyond your deadline. And the ghost is going to feel like they didn't charge enough, because now it's pushing into months that they thought they would be able to take on new projects at additional fees. So the process starts to get bad. It starts to go negative. But yeah, we just need clear lines of communication. If there's a big team, I need to know a point person. If I'm working with a company,
Nice.
I am not going to be gang edited and get input from 6 people, and then I don't know who is really the headhunter person. I don't know your office politics, and now I'm in an awkward position. So there needs to be clarity about, like, who am I talking to? Can your admin handle a lot of this with me? Can I talk to her about stuff? And then, we save it all up for you, or a marketing team person is working with me, and then we go to you with stuff. I just need to know what is the outline here? What's the shape of this?
That's great. Carol, this has been awesome. Super helpful. Thank you so much. Where can people go to buy your books, and then also to reach out? I know you said you're pretty much booked on ghostwriting clients, but if they're interested in reaching out about potentially having you ghostwrite their book.
As we speak in sort of early summer 2021, I have taken 4 meetings with possible new clients in the past 2 weeks. And call me fast if you want me. No one has signed anything. And I'm probably not going to take more than 1 or 2 projects this summer. And that's the other thing to know is, the person you want may not be instantly available. But you can find me and my books and my own stuff at caroltice.com, and all the ebooks at makealivingwriting.com.
Awesome. Carol, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help the podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps of how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.